Pixar is back this week, finally in theaters. We needed this. All their films should be in theaters, but they're finally back in theaters this week with Lightyear, the brand new film in the Toy Story franchise, being a spin-off from the entire other franchise we already got. But now we have 26 Pixar movies to rank from worst to best, and I cannot wait to hear your guys' thoughts down below in the comment section. So leave those comments, hit that like and subscribe button, and let's dive in to this ranking. Before we get to 26, just so you know, this is my full-hearted opinion. I'm a massive Toy Story fan, so you will definitely see some of those films way higher on this list. And again, my list, everyone's list is going to be different, and I can't wait to see yours. Diving into my number 26, we have Cars 2, a film that is just fine and okay. It's not a movie that I completely love or one that I love to go back to. I've probably only seen it a handful of times, but there are some fun elements, I guess, with Mater and Lightning McQueen and some of the spy antiques, even though it is completely dumb. This is absolutely the only Pixar movie for me on this list that actually feels like it's cheaply made. Not just from, the animation looks great, but the story itself seems like something that would have just premiered on Disney Channel, and that's honestly all I needed it to premiere on. But now at my number 25, we have The Good Dinosaur, a film that had some of the most stunning Pixar animation at the times, but a very basic overall story between a dinosaur and a caveman, but more like a cave boy. The thing with this story is that the dinosaur can talk, but the cave boy acts more like a dog, which even adds more funny because the cave boy's name is Spot, and we have Arlo the dinosaur. I enjoy this movie. It's just one that I literally have only seen like once or twice, and I never go back to rewatch this. I remember watching it vividly and being like, okay, this is a pretty basic overall Pixar movie with some incredible animation, but that's about it. I know there's some people who really much have this one warming their hearts up, but it's just not one I go back to too often. But now at my number 24, we have Cars 3, the epic conclusion to the Cars franchise for now until we get the show on Disney+. Again, this movie, amazing animation. You can say that about pretty much all the Pixar movies, but this is one that had some stunning one. They took the same framework that they used in, of course, The Good Dinosaur and placed it in here, and it has this nice story of Lightning McQueen in his end of his era. And I found that to be great. With the character of Cruz Ramirez, it was enjoyable. But this is just, again, one I've literally seen only once in theaters, and I just remember being, that was enjoyable. Never cared to rewatch it, and it's the only Pixar movie I actually don't own on Blu-ray. But now at my number 23, we have Brave. I think Merida is an absolute great character in this franchise, and I really enjoyed her persona and her family and, of course, all the little bears. But for me, there's two different stories in here. There's the whole magical subplot with the bears, which I think is fun and cute and whatnot, but that just more feels like one of those Disney animated movies that was coming around in the early 2000s that was not the best. Then you look at the rest of the story, and especially what it means to be her, how she doesn't want to follow in her family's footsteps and things like that. Those are the elements that I wish the film would have focused on a little bit heavier, because I think those are the best elements of the film. Brave is still enjoyable for what it is, but Merida is the reason that this is a little bit higher on the list. Now at my number 22, we have Finding Dory. Who doesn't love Finding Nemo? I love Finding Nemo. Finding Dory was just okay. Another film that I enjoy for what it is, but Dory for me, I don't think can completely lead the film. And honestly, the one thing I remember is that the fact that they were driving a car by the end of this, her and Hank the Octopus, which Hank the Octopus is an awesome character. And then you see the otters and like Gerald, the whatever, the sea lion, I guess his name is. What is this? What is this? That is what I was saying watching Finding Dory, especially by the end. I feel like it gets a little bit way too off the beaten path. It's still an enjoyable story. It's fun to come back and see the ocean and explore and meet up with other characters and even see new characters. And it has a cool foundation, especially with how Dory isn't just in a fish tank somewhere. No, she's in like this whole entire sea area, and getting to find out a little bit more about her past was enjoyable for the most part. But again, just not one I like to go back to. If I'm going to watch a sea adventure from Pixar, I'm just gonna watch Finding Nemo. And now at my number 21, we have Cars. Again, the Cars franchise is probably the weakest out of the entire Pixar, but this is easily the best one still. Lightning McQueen is fantastic, and I love his redemption and how he kind of comes from this cocky little asshole that he used to be to kind of learning that there's more to life than just this. Seeing how at the very end of his entire journey from Route 66 and going back to the race and seeing how his whole entire thing changes his mentality, it was just heartwarming. And I just love how Owen Wilson actually portrayed this role. This was a really enjoyable movie that, again, I don't go back to too often, but when I was younger, I used to watch the hell out of this. And when I do go back to rewatch it, I'm like, this is still really enjoyable, and I just put a smile on my face every time I watch it. Now at my number 20, we have Monsters University. Now, this is a movie that I say it every time I talk about this film. This would be higher if it had a core emotionality to it. This is very much just like a frat party college comedy that Pixar decided to put out, and it's enjoyable for that. But that's about it. I think Monsters University can be a fun adventure and a fun time at that, and seeing how Mike and Sully came together and some of the other characters that they first met there too. But if they would have included an emotional part of them telling the story to Boo by the end of the story, I think this movie would have been perfection. Now at my number 19, we have The Incredibles 2. Now this was the big sequel that we've all been waiting for since the first Incredibles, and the animation is so stunning. I love that it focuses on Elastigirl, and Bob Parr having to take care of the kids at home, especially Jack Jack, was absolutely hilarious. But there's something about this one when it comes down to the villain that I just never really remember. I remember the details, I remember the visual effects, I remember the animation, all sorts of things like that, but the actual story of why they're doing it just doesn't, I don't really care. And the other heroes they introduce in here, I also really just don't care. This is the film that the more I sit on, I still go back and I'm like, that was a really good sequel. But I just think back and I'm like, it's nowhere even close to how great the original is. And honestly, the fact that Incredibles 2 is like this low on the list just goes as far to show how amazing a lot of Pixar movies are. So now at my number 18, we have A Bug's Life. This is the film that came right after Toy Story, and everyone's like, oh my god, this gotta be as great. It's not, but it's still enjoyable. And this is one that I just really like. While I don't go back to it too often, I really just, it puts a smile on my face. I love the circus gang. I love all that. I love Flick's redemption. I love how it's really much going up against the man, the person, Hopper, the grasshoppers, which is just gross. And it's a film that is very much a satire on certain things in our political aspect that is kind of, as the world has gone on, this is a film that actually relates heavier to our world now than when it had come out. And I love Pixar for that and how they really much went about and made a completely different film that is a satire to a lot of different things. I enjoyed this movie. It's not one of my favorites, but still, it's enjoyable for what it is. Now at my number 17, we have Onward, a film that I actually really adore, and I'm just clamoring, give us an Onward spinoff on Disney Plus or something. This world is just begging for it. Chris Pratt and Tom Holland were perfect casting as these two brothers, and this brotherly adventure we go on to bring their dad back for one last day was honestly really emotional. Now, I'm very lucky to have my dad still in my life and my mother, but this is a film that deeply resonated with me, and especially with the way that it actually brought the brothers and where they ended up going in their story was deeply emotional to me, and it brought a tear to my eye. I find this movie to be so underrated when people talk about Pixar. I know maybe just from the animation it kind of looks like something that DreamWorks would have done, which is no knock at DreamWorks. DreamWorks has made a ton of great movies, but this is a film that I think a lot more people should respect. Now at my number 16, we have Up. Now, Up is just something special, and I know a lot of people probably have this one a lot higher on their list, and for me, the reason that it's just right here, kind of in the middle of the entire Pixar list, is because this movie, I find the first 5 minutes of this film to be perfection. Probably some of the best stuff that Pixar has ever done. I cry my eyes out every single time, and adventure is out there. I love that. But the thing that kind of holds it back for me is the villain. I don't like the villain, and I don't like how crazy it goes about. I'm all fine with them exploring the jungle and things like that, but the villain for me just holds the film back a tad bit. But still, what Up has to say about adventure, what Up has to say about retirement and our younger selves and how we can look back on that really makes me think about my future and how I'm still a child at heart for a lot of different reasons, and that I think adventure is out there, and I'm always striving for that and always going for that. Up brings out that creativism into me and also that childlike nature to me, and I enjoy this film. It has such adorable characters, and it's one of the classic Pixar films now. Which now at my number 15, we have Turning Red, which came out earlier this year, and the more I think about this movie, the more I think it's super underrated. I know not everyone loves it or could relate to it, but I think there is some relatable aspects in there, and some people don't want to head back to their teenage years, but those are some of the years that, you look back and you're like, what was wrong with me? Well, Turning Red reminds you what was wrong with you. I really like how the animation style here that Domee Shi actually brought to this was unique. This is a film I wish I would have been able to see in theaters. That's almost all the films that have been released just straight to Disney+. But this one in particular really harkens back to a lot of different elements for me, especially towards the end when it's Red Panda versus Red Panda. That was really fun. It's just a movie that is honestly, while it takes place in a completely different culture than I've ever been experienced in, it's still one that I could look at my family and be like, yeah, my mom would act like that sometimes. Oh yeah, my dad would act like that sometimes. Oh, siblings, yeah, friends, like all that sorts of stuff. Turning Red is a relatable film for me that just hits somewhere in the heartstrings for me, and I can't imagine where it hits for certain others who maybe did grow up in that environment, who did grow up in Canada, who did grow up in that culture, and other things like that, that this probably is like hitting on all cylinders. Now guys, we are entering the top 14, and before we get there guys, I just want to give you guys a reminder and a big thank you to watching this video. It really means the world. I love talking Pixar, and when we get a new Pixar movie, I love being able to update this list once again, so make sure to slam that like and subscribe button if you enjoy content like this, as well as comment down below your guys' ranking. We're all going to be different, but that's okay. Now at my number 14, we have Luca, one of the most adorable films that very much reminds me of Studio Ghibli, which is the reason that it is above everything else, because I love Studio Ghibli. Besides Pixar, they would be my next favorite animation studio, and something that they are able to bring to so many different lights is the way that just the most simplistic story can be told in such a daring and heartfelt way that just reminds you of family. For me, with Luca, my family is Italian, some of my elements in here, and I feel that. I feel like I've never been to this Italian culture, but I've been able to latch into it a little bit harder because of Luca. Luca as well touches on two characters who really much are best friends, and having that one summer adventure with one another. I had that best friend. That was my summer adventure best friend. We hung out every single day. We went on adventures. We got in trouble sometimes, and Luca reminded me of all that. This is just a sincere and sweet film that I think a lot more people should actually give a chance, and God, is the animation stunning. Now at number 13, we have WALLE, the first romantic film that Pixar created, and I love this film. I think the animation is daring and epic, and it was also one of the first big sci-fi films that Pixar, and I honestly think Disney, had accomplished in a really big way. The first 20 minutes of this film is arguably a silent film, and one that is absolutely deeply resonating, seeing how WALL-E is interacting in this world, and then Eva comes into his life and completely shifts everything. It's love at first sight. What is not to love about this? Now, some of the elements that kind of go into space and the allegories that it has about how we're treating our world are great, but the things with, you know, the obese people and how everyone's big, and that is something that we are heading in a big direction now, but it still takes me out of the moment every single time it works. But still, WALL-E is an excellent movie and one that I love going back to every single time I get the chance. And WALL-E and Eva are two classic characters for Disney. And now we're at my number 12, and my number 12 is Monsters, Inc. Mike and Sully, two of the best duo right next to Buzz and Woody, and I love them in this movie. I love seeing how monsters, because we used to always be scared of the monster under our bed or the monster in the closet, and how does this work within Monsters' world? It's fun. It's resonating, and it's also a big satirical nature to corporations at that time and how it works. This is the film that has a lot more adult humor the more and more you watch it, the older and older you get, but it's one that also has a great character in Boo, who comes and shatters their life and shows that life does not have to be all about scaring people. There is more to life, and Sully is the first one to realize this, who is the top of his chain, and Mike is the one trying to drag him down, but eventually Mike comes to understanding this, and that this girl is important to everything in this world. And while it might implode everything in the monsters world, we need to look back at ourselves in a different way. Now at my number 11, we have Inside Out, a film that I just love so much. It's so adorable, and it's one that really made me think back into my mind, my view, my emotions, and how I was growing up. And again, I think this has elements and really much was a prototype for something that Turning Red had, especially in the way that it relates to kids and teenagers, but as well as what Soul did. And I feel like Inside Out was kind of the prototype for Soul. Soul dove into the soul, Inside Out dove into the emotions. And I love that, because I was emotionally engaged in this film. And seeing the entire world and seeing how they show what's going on inside us, it makes you look into different perspectives of what emotions are coming out. It makes you kind of think, okay, well, should I let this emotion come out right now? And it's smart because it's great for adults and great for kids. But it also, for adults at least, and I know for me specifically, this is a film that I resonate with because of Bing Bong. I had an imaginary friend when I was younger, and then eventually, he just disappeared. And that's what happens in here, he just disappears. And it just brings you to so many tears and emotions, at the same time you're laughing right before that. I love Inside Out, and I love Bing Bong's Farewell. This is a film that, again, 11 and up, I think all these movies are perfect. I really do. I have no issues with every film going on. Which brings me down to my number 10, which is Soul. This is a movie that, again, like I said, I feel like Inside Out was the prototype for this, and this is a film that I did not expect to really much find out the meaning of life from Pixar. The animation is stunning from top to bottom. The human element was absolutely really surprising. They even have a little bit of kid humor in the cat. But the thing that really brought it to life was the way that they mixed that kid humor with the adult nature of it as well. And I think that's what makes Soul a masterpiece, is the way that, again, I can praise the animation, I can praise all these different things, but the dynamics, they really do touch in on these characters and our main character and how he is stuck in one put of his life. But maybe your life is not supposed to be that entire thing, that you have a deeper meaning to other people. And that's something that sometimes it takes just one little small interaction with a student to tell you, hey, like, I don't want to do this anymore. People bully me. I don't want to do this. But you see how much that means to you and how much you can change their lives. It touches my heart. That Soul really shows that we inflict and touch on people's lives every single day and how we have to have different ways of interacting in those lights. And I love this film. And now at my number 9, we have Coco, one of the first big musicals that I absolutely came to love in such a way. The music, the culture, all that sorts of things brought me into this. And we went to the Day of the Dead world, which I think is in the top 5 best worlds that Pixar and Disney have ever created. This is a movie that is about finding our family, finding our culture, and discovering who we are, even though our family wants to hold it back from us. And while exploring the Day of the Dead, it is scary. It's fun for kids. But with the music, the family nature of it, and all building up to that epic conclusion with Mama Coco, yeah, it breaks your heart every single time. Now at number 8, we have Ratatouille, one of the most underrated Pixar movies of all time, and I still contend this. When I see this anywhere below number 10 in people's Pixar rankings, I just go and lose my shit. Honestly, Ratatouille, I think, teaches the great message of do not judge a book by its cover, because this rat is making better food than I will ever be able to make, and especially half the different people in here. The world, the dynamic, and actually touching in on this is, again, what Pixar does best is creating satires and honestly just relatable elements that any of us can watch a rat cooking food and kind of relate to him. The relationship that Linguini and him form in here as well is one of the best duos as well in Pixar, and it's one that's completely weird, but one that just makes sense. And honestly, Brad Bird's direction is some of the best that Pixar has ever done. And I would argue, I think Ratatouille is one of the more mature films in Pixar. I think it's like Ratatouille, Soul, all those, very mature in its own right, and especially are very much more for adults than kids. Now at my number 7, we have Lightyear. This is the brand new Toy Story spin-off movie now in theaters, and it asks the question, what was the movie that Andy saw in 1995 that made him want to get a Buzz Lightyear action figure? This is that movie. And it is a movie that harkens back to 90s sci-fi epics and as well as other features in modern era. Now we look at films and you can compare this to Star Trek, Star Wars, Flash Gordon, and even adding in elements of such as Interstellar, The Martian, who are new, and even 2001: A Space Odyssey. This is a film that deeply resonates me and brings me into the Pixar atmosphere in a way that I was personally not expecting, but one that emotionally engaged me with what it had to say about time and what time reflects to us. I'm passionate when it comes down to this, and Interstellar kind of had the same stuff, but Lightyear takes it in a different dynamic, especially with the way that it takes in its twists and turns towards the third act that completely change the narrative and make you think, holy shit, you can actually reflect in a different type of light. And for me, when you look at Lightyear and you're really much comparing, he has a lot of regrets and a lot of things that he messed up on, but Lightyear is able to showcase all these important elements, and I was honestly really happy with this film. It's action-packed, it has crowd-pleasing moments, I was emotionally resonated, and I just fucking love this film. This is one of the best Pixar movies for me, and again, biased to Toy Story, whatever, I was very nervous for this film, but I loved it, and it absolutely met my expectations and even exceeded them. And honestly, if you came to me and told me you didn't like Lightyear, I'd be kind of shocked. I think this is just a movie that really adds much to the world and just gets me excited for what else you can do and kind of refreshes the entire franchise. Instead of just doing a Toy Story 5, This was a great way to kind of keep the franchise alive. Now, at my number 6, we have The Incredibles. I honestly think this is one of the most rewatchable films of all time. I have seen this film countless times, especially when I worked at like a restaurant that we had to play kid movies all day, and we only had like 5 selections. The Incredibles, every time I worked, was always on repeat, and I could constantly watch it. And this film only works better today, especially with all the different superhero movies we have, the satire that it does on that, and in the sense how this is a midlife crisis film for Bob Parr himself, Mr. Incredible. And what happens when you have a family? You have to retire. You can't be a hero anymore. You have to change your career path. Well, maybe you kind of look back and you're like, well, is that something I actually wanted to do? And he starts diving into that, lying to his family, everything like this, which is, again, I think something that happens in everyone's lives where they look back and they're like, is this something I should actually be doing? And he learns by the end, yes. Bringing my family together is the best element that I could possibly do, and I love this movie so much. It's funny, it's hilarious, it's action-packed, and it's one that, honestly, I'm going to go watch it right after I'm done filming this ranking. Now, at my number 5, we have Finding Nemo, and like I mentioned, Finding Dory was a fun little fish adventure, but if I'm going to watch a fish adventure from Pixar, it's going to be Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo, for me, I think has some of the most iconic characters when it comes to any animated film ever. And a lot of that goes because I felt like my biggest issue with Finding Dory is the way they split the story. You know, you have Dory's story, and then you have them trying to find her. Finding Nemo, no matter which subplot you're on, whether it's the tank gang in Nemo or Marlin and Dory going after Nemo to find him, there are always something interesting. It's always something interesting going on. I'm always fascinated with both types of stories and trying to see the desperation that this father does, this nervously clownfish who's never left the reef before and really much has a scared part of the ocean, especially after his wife passes away. How do we get and how do I get all the way over to here to find my son? That journey of heading back is emotional, it's hilarious, and it just is a classic film that you can just repeat those lines on, and I adore this film to such a high heaven. Now we get to my number 4. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I was gonna cheat. I always debate on doing this in my Pixar rankings, but I said, screw it, I'm gonna do it. It's my favorite franchise of all time. And we're just gonna cheat it right now. 1, 2, 3, and 4. My number 1 is Toy Story 1. My number 2 is Toy Story 2. My number 3 is Toy Story 3. And my number 4 is Toy Story 4. Those are my top 4 Pixar films of all time. I love Toy Story more than anything because every time these films have come out or anytime I go back to watch them, I always find something different that really much is affecting my life. Toy Story 1 was there for me when my sister was born. And for me, when I watched it, it was like, hey, like, you're not going to be forgotten. It's okay. There's enough love for everyone to go around. Toy Story 2 kind of resonated with me in the adventures that I wanted to go on. And again, looking back into what might be in my past and to appreciate it, but also appreciate the future and understand I'm never going to be let go. And it's honestly, Toy Story 2, for me, I don't think is the most deeply resonating Toy Story film, but it is one of the most fun ones. And that's a film that I love diving into and absolutely laughing my ass off. It is one of the best sequels ever created. Then you look at Toy Story 3, and it's a prison break movie. Like, they're trying to escape this daycare and also by the very end come to terms that it's time for the next adventure. And it's not with your original person. It's not with that. And that's something that I learned the hard way, you know? Maybe in a relationship, maybe with friends, that's what you learn. That next adventure is going on. And it's so fun. And then Toy Story 4, which I know some people don't think was needed. For me, I didn't think it was needed, but I'm so happy we have it because it is the perfect epilogue to the entire Toy Story franchise. We had a Toy Story trilogy that was perfect, and then we get a perfect epilogue. And I know not everyone's going to agree with that, but for me, if you have not gone through what Woody is going through yet in here in your life, when you do, you will look back and be like, holy shit, I totally agree in everything going here. Some people say he betrayed his friends. No, it was time for him to move on to the next part of his life and actually live it. He's been living for other people. I know I'm passionate. I just love Toy Story so much. It is my favorite franchise of all time. It is my favorite 4 movies of all time. And I can deeply watch these films every single day because each and every script is hilarious. It's fun. It's satirical. It has nuances to other different genres and other different movies, and they have so much fun in those elements. Buzz and Woody are the best duo in any film ever. It changed animation forever from the first Toy Story film. This is a perfect franchise, and it doesn't get any better than this. And I love it to all high heavens, and it again is my favorite 4 Pixar films of all time. 1, 2, 3, and 4, rounding it all out there. And if you did watch my Toy Story ranking, I know that one's a little bit different. I explained it in that video why it is different for me in this one. It's just I saw that first one, and it changed my life forever. So guys, that is going to be my Pixar ranking. Again, you're probably going to disagree with me, but let me know down below what your guys' thoughts are. Thank you so much again for watching this. You guys are really all the best. And of course, until next time, stay classy.